I saw this study that said less than 6 cents of every dollar for food goes to the actual farmer.
And that's another point I wanted to bring up, was that we don't decide the price. We're price takers, because we have to take what the market will pay, and it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially when let's say somebody takes the corn and makes cooking oil out of it. Well, they can charge whatever they want to for that cooking oil, but we're not in that position.
All right, so I am flying solo today, everybody. Jason Wheeler here. Jason Whiteley, he's more of a city boy, and he couldn't make it all the way out here to Lucas, Texas with us, even though it's just outside of Dallas. If you're familiar with Allen, there along 75, it's right next to that. But this is very country for Jason Whiteley, and actually he was busy doing some other things, or at least I think he was. But we're out here in the country a little bit today because we're talking about the Iran war, of all things, and these two are very connected. And with us today we've got James Foster, who is a farmer and a rancher, and he's also a board member with the Texas Farm Bureau. And what are we sitting here in front of, James?
Oh, this is one of our row crop tractors.
This is impressive. Like, you see these when you're driving around sometimes out in rural areas, and they're usually off in a field somewhere.
Right.
And, it looks like a tractor, but when you get right up next to this thing, it's enormous.
It is. They're pretty big, and we have to move them around on their roadways here some, and people are pretty good about letting us get around, but
yeah, well, you're bigger than they are. They should be.
It is kind of a challenge sometimes.
How much is this tire that's sitting behind me on this thing? It's got to be. I mean, that's the first thing I thought because I was looking at tires for my car recently.
That's about a $3,000 tire.
Yeah. Okay. That's a big cost input.
That one's not a $3,000 tire because that one's got a lot of wear on it.
Yeah. When they're $3,000 a piece, you ride them until they fall off, don't you?
That's right.
So the reason that we're sitting in front of this, and the reason that we're talking to you today, as I said, the Iran war has brought us here, just because, in the early going here and in the past several weeks, a lot of us have, obviously noticed what's happened with gas prices. That hits all of us. We see it every time we fill up. But we don't think about some of the other things that are affected. First of all, you all out on farms and ranches are dealing with the gas prices as well in the form of diesel prices.
That's right.
Which have just absolutely skyrocketed. And then the other biggie here, probably the biggest here, is fertilizer. And we keep hearing about that a lot of fertilizer is sitting out there on the water in the Persian Gulf because it can't get out of there while this is playing out. But a lot of people don't understand why fertilizer comes from there. But natural gas is a big part of creating fertilizer. And of course, they've got a ton of natural gas there in the Middle East, so now it makes sense. So what's going on with fertilizer right now?
Well, fertilizer prices have increased big time. We just got to the point on our crops where we needed to fertilize our corn. We initially put out fertilizer when we plant through the planter, and then we come back after the corn gets going and we side dress it, is what we call it. And we use a rig that injects fertilizer into the ground next to the plants. We kind of band it, if you would. And so the increase in fertilizer costs from the time the war started until now cost me an additional $15,000.
$15,000 just to do that extra shot of fertilizer.
Yes.
And that's an additional $15,000 beyond what you would have spent.
Beyond what I would
that.
normally spend.
That is a lot of money.
It is.
I mean, I'm not telling you that, I guess.
And we were already operating on very thin margins, and so this just makes it a lot more difficult. The frustrating part about it is that the fertilizer were in the tanks at our fertilizer plant long before this happened. And it's all geopolitically driven. And So that's the frustrating part of it.
Supply and demand is what starts taking over there. So
Well-
everybody starts going, it's going to get really expensive. Let's all go down there and buy our fertilizer now. And the person holding the fertilizer goes, how bad do you want this?
Well, another aggravating part of it is only 20% of the fertilizer that comes to the United States comes through the strait.
It really tells you too, though, how interconnected it all is, because a lot of people have wondered the same thing about oil and gasoline, and they're like, we've got a lot of oil here, and we can produce our own gasoline here. Why are we affected so much by that? But all of it is interconnected, and it's all run through world markets.
Politics.
That's hard. It's
It
hard
is.
when you're just trying to make a living and get by and make the crops grow.
That's right.
So tell me this. If I'm at home and I've planted a few plants out in the yard, and I'll throw some fertilizer on them, or I'll throw some on the grass, but it's not the death knell for it all. If I go, wait, how much is that bag? I'm not paying that. I'll just let it go without this year. What people don't understand maybe, though, when you're doing a crop, it's essential. You can't do without it.
Well, if you try to grow a crop without it, you will never regain the other expenses you've got in the crop.
Okay.
It's impossible. They need those nutrients to be profitable.
So if you hadn't put that extra $15,000 into this shot of fertilizer recently for your corn, what happens to that corn?
The corn would just not be very productive. It would be a lot smaller, and it wouldn't make hardly any grain at all.
Okay, so
It wouldn't be worth doing.
So you were faced with this decision then, do I fork over an additional $15,000 and make this right, or do I potentially lose most of this crop?
Yeah, it was not even a question to me. I wouldn't even consider that.
Yeah, give me an idea. What are the numbers on that? If you're on one hand thinking, I got to pay $15,000 extra dollars to put this fertilizer out, how much would it have cost you if you had to estimate if you hadn't done it and you lost that crop?
Oh, hundreds of thousands.
Okay, that's an easy decision. $15,000 it is.
Right.
Other people are going through this as well. How many acres are you talking about here?
I'm talking about almost 1,100 acres of corn.
Okay, 1,100 acres. Can you give us perspective on that? Is that, for city folk like Jason Whiteley, is that a huge amount, or how do you sit, as far as other farmers go?
Well, at that, I'm considered a small farmer.
Okay.
There's a lot of consolidation that's going on in farming right now, because you have to be big to stay in the game.
Scale.
Because
it's all about scale.
The profit margins are so small that if you don't have a tremendous amount of acres, it's almost impossible to stay in business, because the expenses of the equipment and just all the inputs, it's staggering. And I'm lucky enough that myself and my wife have off farm income. We both had careers before. My wife's a nurse. She's a neonatal nurse, and I was a professional firefighter for 29 years. So I've got off farm income.
That mailbox money that still keeps coming after you
Right.
retire.
So I don't have to completely depend on farming to make a living. People that are in that position, it's tough right now.
It's really hard, and that's part of the reason we wanted to come out here and talk to you, because the American Farm Bureau has been crunching some numbers on this. First off, from what we can see here, nitrogen fertilizer prices, we've read, have climbed more than 30% since the war started, and some of the other products associated have gone up even more than that. Is that still about accurate?
Yes.
And then the American Farm Bureau Federation did this survey recently, and the statistics out of that were just kind of staggering. It says that farmers across the country are struggling with this, with these extra costs for fertilizer, but particularly in the South, which Texas is part of that region, nearly 8 in 10 farmers in the South reported that they can't afford all the fertilizer they need this year. That's higher than in other regions in the U.S. Why is that?
Well, because in the Midwest, they have more regular rainfall than we do. They get a lot more rain than we do. You know, they can count on it.
Yeah, nature's helping them out a little bit more.
Right, and they have a better idea of what they're doing year from year. I mean, they're pretty much making a decision whether they're going to go with corn or beans. And down here in the South, we have our weather is a lot more erratic.
Yeah, it is.
And so we may get rain, we may not get rain, and a lot of decisions aren't made until planting time.
And planting time is about when?
About, well, with corn, the first part of March.
Okay.
And then some of the other crops in April in this area.
So the timing of this, I mean, you know, it's enough that the whole situation, you know, happened in the Middle East and things are going the way they're going right now, fertilizer-wise. But it sounds like the timing of this couldn't have been worse, you know, because it's right after, as people were planting.
It came right at the time when we're in full swing doing field work. So we're using a lot of diesel and fertilizer, and it just, all this came at a bad time.
Does this tractor here, this runs off diesel?
Yes.
What does it cost to fill this baby up?
About $1,000.
I call it a baby. It's huge. $1,000 to
Right.
fill up the tank.
Yeah.
Wow. And how long does that get you if you're out there, you know, working the land and doing what you do?
It all depends on what you're doing.
Yeah.
If you're doing something that's not using a lot of horsepower, it's fairly fuel efficient. I mean, you might be able to run it for 2 days. You know, if you're just doing something that's not putting it under a lot of load.
Yeah.
But if you're doing cultivation, it'll burn that much a day.
So $1,000 of diesel a day just for this tractor potentially.
Right.
That's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money.
And I don't think that lay people really have much of an idea about the cost inputs that go into all of this. And it really is enlightening when you start to put all of that together. You know, most of us just, you know, go to the produce section and pick something out. We're not thinking about all of this here. You know, when we talk about fertilizer though too, there was another thing that came out of that survey. You can pre-book fertilizer, so that's, I guess, you know,
Right,
sort of hedging and getting ahead of it when the price is good and you go, hey, I want that much and I'm going to pay the price of, you know, for today. And it said just 19% of Southern farmers pre-booked their fertilizer. So,
And that goes back to the part we were talking about just a minute ago about, you know, not knowing, you know, which direction you're going to go on your crop rotation in this part of the.
So that makes a lot of sense because you're trying to gauge what's the weather going to be like, what's this year going to look like, and so you don't pre-book a bunch of fertilizer that you might not need.
Right.
And so, you know, we read that, and so 81%, most farmers down this way got caught and were like, uh-oh, now I got to go down, you know, to this place where they've got the fertilizer and I'm at their mercy, and
Right.
and they're running into that. What are you hearing from fellow farmers, fellow ranchers out there right now?
Well, just the deep financial strain.
Do you hear about it all the time? I mean, is it something
yes.
that's discussed like just openly and constantly?
Well, I wouldn't say it's just openly discussed between farmers, but it definitely is being discussed. And we had our accountant over today, and he actually owns a big accounting firm that works specifically for farmers, and they work in Texas and Oklahoma. And we were sitting at our kitchen table earlier, and he started discussing the fact that he has 6 customers right now that are in default with the bank and they're being foreclosed on. He said that is unheard of, and he said that it's, in a way, it's similar to the 80s. He was in business in the 80s when interest rates were so high, and farm foreclosures were at an all-time high. And that's when the farmers drove their tractors to D.C. was in the 80s, you know, to protest. And he said the only difference between now and then was that land prices are high right now, so that makes them look better on paper. and interest rates are a lot lower. That's the only difference in really what's going on right now, and what was going on in the 80s.
Boy, in your industry, that's a pretty terrible comparison if you're hearing that. And this is an accountant who deals exclusively with people who work the land, and,
Yes.
and this is what he's seeing out there.
That's right.
Wow. So, as unfun as that is to sit there at the kitchen table and go through all the finances at a time like this when the numbers are high, you had to be sitting there also thinking, wow, it can get a whole lot worse.
Right. And thinking I don't want to be in that situation where, the bank's coming to me telling me to sell my equipment or, worse.
Yeah, it's rough times for a lot of folks. Let's talk about where you go from here, because it's been a difficult environment for a while here. So we had heard for a while there that it was tough to get labor out on farms. Is that still happening? Is it tough to get workers to come out?
Well, it was there for a while. I think that's improved a little bit.
Okay, so that's gotten a little bit better.
Right.
Cost-wise, beyond diesel and beyond fertilizer, what have your costs done in the last 1-2 years?
They've just they've gone up.
And we're talking everything from what to what, because a lot of us don't really pay attention. I mean, is it seed? Is it what do you?
Oh, just the cost of everything. I mean, we've got, with all the pieces of equipment we have, tires is a big input or a big cost to us, and the cost of tires has gone up a lot, and everything's gone up. But I noticed this. It started during the last administration, and it's just steadily climbed since then.
And are people pulling back on? I mean, when we see that or hear that farmers can't afford all of the fertilizer they need, are you hearing from people who are just pulling back or who are
Yes.
not planting?
I talked to a producer in the Panhandle yesterday that said he would be using fertilizer very sparingly because he just couldn't afford to buy it.
So he's taking that gamble that we just talked about,
Right.
where maybe you lose the whole thing.
Well, it's hard to say. It's a lot different situation in the Texas Panhandle, and he's planning on growing milo. So milo is a lot different than corn. You have to have fertilizer readily available for the plant at its smaller stages.
Yeah.
Milo will hang on, and you could add fertilizer later if it looks like you're starting to get plenty of moisture.
So it's more forgiving.
Right, it is. It definitely is.
I was going to ask you, so if we look at different kinds of crops, what is it that is the most fertilizer dependent, would you say?
I would say corn.
So it's corn.
In this part of the world.
Okay, so when we hear that, though, I mean, corn is a huge staple, not just at the store where you buy, let's say you buy several ears of corn. Corn is responsible for so many other products that we use every day, and may not even realize that corn has a hand in that. What is this going to? How does this trickle down? If it's costing that much more to produce this, what happens down the line with prices?
Well, there's a big disconnect right now between commodity prices and input cost, and it seems like there's also a disconnect between what we're getting for our product and what they're charging for it as a finished product.
I saw this study that said less than 6 cents of every dollar for food goes to the actual farmer.
And that's another point I wanted to bring up, was that we don't decide the price. We're price takers, because we have to take what the market will pay, and it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially when let's say somebody takes the corn and makes cooking oil out of it. Well, they can charge whatever they want to for that cooking oil, but we're not in that position.
Right, you still get the same amount that you got before, and the other costs are just sort of spread out down the line.
Right, so I don't necessarily think that we're getting an all-time low for our product. We're a lot of our commodities, we're being paid the same price as they were being paid for in the 70s.
Oh my God. Your costs are up since the 70s.
There's a huge difference because you know, we're paying $450, $500 a ton for nitrogen right now, and back then, you know, they were paying probably like $30 a ton. You know, I don't know the exact number, but I'm just throwing that out there as a number. It was considerably, you know, a fraction of what we're paying now.
And yet you're getting about the same amount of money for what you're selling.
Yes, and it's almost, I hate to say this, but it's almost our fault because we're so productive in the United States. But we need that production to stay dependent. We do not want to get into a situation where we're depending on adversarial countries to supply food. And so that's why it's so important for American farmers to stay in business and to be able to operate, is so that it's national security.
The tariff conversation has kind of died down a little bit, I think, here recently with, you know, the Supreme Court's ruling about the tariffs. Is that still something that's affecting farmers? Are you still hearing about that or seeing that?
Well, I think that the markets don't seem to be as sensitive to that now.
Yeah.
It's kind of like it's been going on for a while, and so as time goes on, it seems to be less and less of an impact.
Let's talk a little bit about the politics of all of this, because, you know, if you talk about tariffs, if you talk about, you know, labor on the farms, which in a lot of cases is immigrant labor, when you talk about this Iran war, you know, you mentioned that this spans administrations, some of these struggles, but this is under a Trump administration and a GOP-controlled Congress. And farmers and ranchers traditionally have been very supportive of the Republican Party. Do you see any of that slipping right now? Are you hearing criticisms right now? And if so, what?
Well, what I've heard is that farmers are still pro-Trump. There's a few things that have happened that have been negative to agriculture, but we see the end game, and for years I thought that it was so wrong that other countries were charging us these high tariffs, and we were just sitting there, you know, taking it. And I think what Trump is doing, it's going to hurt a little bit in the beginning, but in the long run, we're gonna be a lot better off for it.
Is he losing anybody in your industry at this point? Do you sense that?
I'm not sensing that at this point.
What would you say? I mean, and I know again that this Iran war has been a tough one out on the farms. What would you say to the president if he were listening to you right now, specifically about that?
I would say I support you 100% in what you're doing, and the reason I say that is because I think a little pain right now is worth not having that nuclear threat over our heads. And
you actually do get to speak with the administration, members of the administration,
yes,
because you're, you know, with the Texas Farm Bureau, and so you run into them from time to time. What sorts of things do you say to them when you have them one-on-one like that?
Well, I had a one-on-one conversation with Brooke Rollins about 4 days ago.
Agriculture Secretary.
Yes, Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins in the Rio Grande Valley back on Friday. And what I told her was I just wanted to share with you a personal story, you know, that might help you. And I told her about what I told you about the additional cost with fertilizing our corn.
Yeah, and what response did you get? Did you get the sense that leaders in Washington are plugged in on this and that they
Yes.
get it and they see what's happening?
Yes, and she assured me that it's being worked on. And they actually had a meeting with the fertilizer companies last week, and they felt like it was productive. And also they plan to bring this up at the G20 summit. The Trump administration has announced that they're poising to bring this to light at the G20 summit and see what they can do, you know, on a global on a global effect.
Yeah, because a lot of people haven't kept up closely with this because it doesn't affect them day to day as far as
Right.
they see anyway. This issue is percolating higher and higher because it's becoming a big thing, not just here, but in other countries as well, where a lot of things are grown. We have seen this stat too that 94% of farmers say their financial situation has either worsened or stayed the same compared to last year. That's not a good stat either.
Right.
There's a lot of talk right now that there could be some bailout payments sent to farmers. And in the past, you know, obviously any help you can get, you get. But we've heard from farmers in the past who say, you know, I don't want to make my money that way. I want to just, you know, do what I do. How is that looked at? If
No,
that does
that's
come along?
exactly right. We would much rather be successful by getting out there and doing our thing. You know, growing our crops, making a good yield, and being paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
And the government payments though are completely necessary to keep a lot of farmers in business. Like I said earlier, with the big spread between commodity prices and input cost, some of those payments are it's keeping a lot of farmers going right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard people say, well, if you can't make a living farming, go do something else. Well, that's the situation we don't want to get into, of becoming dependent on other countries to feed us.
Mm-hmm.
And that all goes back to national security.
So if this continues this way, if prices continue this way for an extended period, as we record this right now, the ceasefire is still in effect. Talks may not be happening between the U.S. and Iran. It's hard to kind of keep up with where
Right.
things are. And there doesn't appear to be an end in sight right now. If this continues for a good while longer, are we going to see farmers here in Texas just going out of business, not able to do it?
Well, there's farmers going out of business now, but a lot of that goes back to you know, a lot of these big corporations running the prices of inputs up so high.
Mm-hmm.
And until somebody gets their attention and says, hey, this has got to be brought under control, the price gouging situation we're in, you will see more family farms going out of business.
James, how long have you been doing this?
Well, I'm a first generation farmer,
Mm-hmm.
and I started this a little over 25 years ago.
Okay, that's a good period of time. In that 25 years, can you kind of put this into perspective for us then? If you look back over that time, there have been good years, there have been bad years. How does right now rank as far as the difficulty of just doing business?
Oh, it's the toughest it's been since I've started.
In 25 years?
Yes.
You're mighty calm when you say that too.
It just doesn't do a whole lot of good to get worked up about it. I mean, we just have to keep looking forward, and that's one of the things about farmers. They're eternal optimists.
Mm-hmm.
And
You almost have to be, don't you?
if we weren't and we didn't love what we were doing, we would get out of it because it's very stressful at times. A lot of sleepless nights.
Mm-hmm. When you look through the rest of this year, what do you see? When it's time to harvest and all of that, by the time it's all said and done, how is this year, how are you going to do?
Well, it's hard to say. Mother Nature has control over what kind of yield we make.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, we don't have a whole lot of control over the markets. And as you can see with this fertilizer situation, things can change overnight. The price we could end up making a bumper crop this year, and our yields be very high, and we end up getting a decent price for it, and it would kind of help pay off some stuff and heal up from some of the the debt that we're in. Or it could quit raining it's looking good so far as the amount of rainfall we're getting.
Knock on that wooden chair when you say that.
Yeah, no kidding. I wish I hadn't said that.
We'll have to cut that part out, right? But there's that eternal optimism too,
Right. Yeah.
And it's almost like that's how you keep putting one foot in front of the other.
That is how we do that.
Yeah.
That's great.
But the most difficult in 25 years, have you thought about stopping?
No, not at this point. I've stuck through some tough times. In the beginning, when I first got started, it was really difficult, and I had some times when I thought about getting out, but it's a passion for me, and so I think I'll stick with it as long as I can.
So when you get that sticker shock of $15,000 extra to throw fertilizer on the crop, you don't have that moment of I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore.
I have had those moments, but I'm usually able to get past it.
I'm guessing your wife kind of pulls you back down. And she's very calm too. She's sitting off to the side here. No, she's shaking her head no. So she's not talking you off the ledge.
She's usually a little more conservative than me,
Yeah.
as far as the way she thinks about paying off these loans and stuff. And
Yeah.
I mean, conservative, I don't know is the right word, but it just seems to. I usually figure out a way to make it work.
When you say, and I think that a lot of people don't understand this part either. When you say paying off the loans, what kinds of loans?
Well, we've got equipment loans.
Mm-hmm.
And
Because
then,
this stuff does not come cheap.
right, and then there's the fertilizer and chemical company,
Yeah.
and there's just a lot of expenses out there, but mainly equipment and inputs.
And a lot of farmers still have loans on their land as well that they're paying. Right?
We also have that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people that you're sending money out to, and you're hoping that the money comes in as well. I asked you how much the tire was on this tractor behind us. I'm calling it a tractor. Is that the right?
Yes,
Okay.
that's right.
How much is this tractor?
Well, a new one would be $750,000.
Okay, that's up there. So I mean, it just, I think it helps
Right.
for the rest of us to kind of get that back of the napkin math going, and realizing that when you hear about these struggles that are happening among the people who feed us all, it's real, and these are big numbers.
Right.
My last thing that I would ask is, being with the Texas Farm Bureau, you interact with so many growers across the state. What would you tell them right now? I mean, I know that you have personal conversations with them when you're talking. What do you tell farmers right now who are in the thick of this, and who have those sleepless nights like you've had, and who maybe have had those moments of thinking, I just can't do this anymore? What do you tell them?
Well, I think if we stick with it, I think we'll make it over the hump eventually, and but there's going to have to be some changes take place for sure.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of those conversations are happening, I would suppose, every time you go to Austin, every time you're in D.C.
That's right.
And you go to these places, and you're rattling cages trying to make people understand.
That's right.
Well, best of luck to you and to all who grow our food. It's something I think a lot of us don't think enough about. And thanks for having us out here today.
Well, I appreciate it, and I really appreciate the fact that you're showing interest in it, and I think it'll help for more people to know, what the farm community is going through right now.
And as much as I like to bash Jason Whiteley, who is the other Jason, he's officially called the other Jason on this podcast. He actually did do a little bit of work for this one. We had Agriculture Commissioner here in the state of Texas, Sid Miller, come by the workplace earlier this week, and while he was there, Jason posed some questions to him about exactly what you all are going through right now, to get his take on, because that's a different perspective being in elected office right now, and he deals closely obviously with the federal administration as well, and here was their discussion.
Commissioner, it's good to see you again here.
It's good to be with you again.
We're seeing diesel up sharply, nitrogen fertilizer up more than 30% in some cases. At what point do you think this will cause farmers to cut back on production?
Well, we've already seen the effects of that. Our corn acres are down. That requires a lot of nitrogen, a lot of fertilizer. Being replaced with soybeans. Soybeans are a legume. They make their own nitrogen, so less fertilizer costs. We've seen a little bit of shift there. It's not quite as bad as it seems on the surface. So our wheat crop, all fertilized last fall, last year's prices. A lot of farmers book their fertilizer in the fall and winter for tax reasons. So probably 70 or 80% of the fertilizer was already booked.
So it means it was locked in.
Locked in.
Okay.
Locked in. But we've got other crops that use a lot of fertilizer. Corn is one of them. So we've already got a corn up in Texas. So it was fertilized before the straight lockdown.
Sure.
But we're getting the hay season. Hay uses lots of nitrogen fertilizer. Now we can make our own nitrogen. We make that out of natural gas into a product called urea or anhydrous ammonia.
Sure.
But we can't make enough of it in the spring because it's just a big surge. We just can't quite get there. The problem we have is with phosphorus and potassium. That has to be mined, and we really don't have those mines. That comes out of Canada and Russia.
And then diesel fuel too, though. That's impacting farms across
Diesel
the state.
is a big factor. It's way up. In the late 90s, we switched to no-till farming, which we went from 5 gallons of diesel per acre to 1 gallon, so we reduced our fossil fuels 80%. But still, it's a factor because we use it to run our combines, our tractor. We did get some relief from the EPA. They're going to roll back the requirement to use DEF in our equipment, diesel efficiency fluid, which is very expensive and causes a lot of downtime. It's going to save us about $13 billion. So
wow.
We got that shut off. So that's good.
People may not realize, but what's happening with the Strait of Hormuz in Iran is directly impacting farmers in Texas.
Yes.
Are farmers, it seems so far away, are farmers upset about this? Are they taking a side on this?
Oh, we definitely notice it, but we're used to adversity. That's all we live with. We live with adversity, with floods, famines, feasts, fires, hailstorms, tariffs,
this isn't
embargoes.
This isn't a natural issue here, and it still affects the bottom line,
well,
right?
It does. Of course it does. Of course it does. Now, we've got the administration's doing everything it can for the farmer. There's probably going another tranche of bridge payments out of the tariffs. They're taking several $1 billion of the tariffs and spending it on infrastructure for fertilizer, where we can make our own fertilizer. So that's going into the works this week.
But, okay, so you and I talked last time about there might be a bailout for farmers because of tariffs.
Right.
Will there be a second bailout because of what's happening in Iran?
They haven't announced it, but I believe that will happen.
Wow, how much money are we talking about here, do you think?
The last one, I believe, was $13 billion, so something in that range probably would happen again.
And Commissioner, people will be watching this and saying, listen, the Trump administration got itself into both of these situations, the tariff situation and the Iran situation here. These aren't natural disasters, hurricanes or something else that's impacting these, or droughts. What do you say to folks who say that, farmers shouldn't, the Trump administration should not be paying out farmers for something that it's to blame for?
Well, here it's a matter of national security. We have to keep our farmers in business because already we're in big trouble. Remember, on one show we talked about the agriculture trade deficit. We're buying $50 billion more food than we're selling. That's never happened before. So we got to get out of that situation. And letting farmers go deeper and deeper in debt is not a solution. So we have alternatives to fertilizer that we're using. If you live near a poultry farm, a dairy feedlot, a hog operation, you can use chicken manure or manure out of those for fertilizer. So that's an option. You can change crops. Plant a legume that makes its own nitrogen. So we're kind of like the Marines. We improvise and we adapt and we overcome.
Consumers haven't felt the full impact yet because economists say that that's still coming here. When do you expect Texans to see this impact at the grocery store?
I don't think we're going to see much of it at the grocery store.
You don't think so?
No.
But farmers can't absorb this, can they?
Well, keep in mind that when you buy something at the grocery store, the farmer gets about 6 cents of that. Rest of it's in transportation, production, advertising, retail markup. So it's not, if wheat and a loaf of bread costs an extra 2 cents, consumers really won't feel that.
You don't think the rising cost of diesel fuel and fertilizer is going to impact people at the grocery store, though?
I don't think the fertilizer will. The diesel, because that's transportation.
It could hit them twice.
Yeah, you get it everywhere, not
Yeah.
only on the production end of the agriculture production, but on deliveries and freight.
But
That's
it's-
a big deal.
it's-
That could drive it up.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Commissioner. As far as rising prices, though, you don't think that the consumers will see that?
I think
for a
it'll be
moment?
negligible. We're seeing fuel prices, roll back. If we could ever get that worked out, I think fuel prices are going to come down a lot faster than fertilizer prices.
The Houston Chronicle reported that nearly 60% of farmers say their financial situation is worsening. Are we at risk of losing smaller farms in this state?
We are. We haven't had a good year in a long time, except in the beef industry. Cow-calf producers, it's a bright spot. They're making a little money, but the commodities, the row crop guys, just really haven't. So they need a little help, need a little good luck, need a little God's guidance on their farm.
And I asked you at the beginning, though, about whether you're hearing from farmers who've cut back on planting because of the lack of fertilizer and diesel fuel. It's harder to get, it's more expensive. Are there specific crops that farmers just are moving away from? Is it corn? Is it?
We're moving a little less corn and more soybeans, but just a little less fertilizer. We can get by 1 year, we're cutting back a little bit, but you can't do that 2 or 3 years in a row. And I think this is temporary. I think we're going to get that straight, worked out, Strait of Hormuz worked out with Iran, and one way or the other, hopefully we'll be out of this by summer.
Farmers are big supporters of President Trump. Do you think that they are fans of the first year and a half between tariffs and this issue in Iran?
They're sticking with him. He gave them the bridge loan. He propped them up when they didn't make any money. He made sure they stayed in business. They appreciate that. They'd rather have a profit than a handout, but they'd rather not go out of business either. So he's making sure that they're made whole.
Let's talk about the screwworm here. You and I discussed the New World screwworm. It's not a worm, it's a fly, I believe you originally said here.
Yeah.
Last time we had you on, you were talking about the tremendous effort that the state and USDA are doing down in South Texas, breeding sterile flies to try to infiltrate these flies that are spreading this disease. At stake here is the beef industry in this state, right?
Well, all livestock, all wildlife.
All livestock.
All mammals, actually.
We're getting close. It seems to me that it seems to me there was a plan to stop this, but you think it's getting worse.
It's not getting stopped. Since January 2025, we've released 7,200,000,000 sterile flies. It's just as bad. It's getting worse. It's not getting better. We have not stopped them.
7 billion flies, though? That hasn't impacted this?
No, has not done one thing. They've come from 1,100 miles away within 62 miles of the Texas border. And we kept having more cases every day. We average somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 cases a week, and it's been that constant for 72 months. We haven't made any headway, other than they've made their way from southern Mexico to northern Mexico. And we're losing that battle. And we're not using all the tools that we could. We could send this back to Central America in 90 days if we just use the fly bait that USDA developed in 1975.
Why aren't we using that?
They say it will kill too many good flies. I don't know what a good fly is, but hey, if it kills good flies, I guess they're talking about a blowfly. Screwworm is a type of blowfly. It feeds on living flesh. Blowflies live on decaying flesh. If we kill too many, we got fly factories. Let's just make some more of them, turn them loose. We're back even. So we need, short of doing that, we're going to be fully infested this summer with screwworm flies. And it's going to take us 3 years to produce enough of the sterile flies to get this under control. So we're going to have to live with it at least 3 more years.
We've talked about the New World screwworm being dangerously close to Texas in the past. You mentioned it's about 60 miles from the border here. How imminent is this threat? How much danger is this to livestock farmers across the state?
Livestock, that's a $30 billion industry, so that's pretty damaging. But it doesn't stop there. Wildlife industry, we've got 5 million head of deer. We've got 1 million under high fence, exotics. But it's sheep, goats, it's pets, it's humans. There's been 3,000 human cases in Mexico of screwworm infestation in humans. We've
Can
had
people
2.
survive it?
If you get to them quick enough, a lot of times it'll be a nasal discharge. They'll lay their eggs in the nostrils, around the watery eyes, or in the ear canal. And keep in mind, the reason they call it a screwworm, it's actually a larva. And the larva hatches out, it keeps burrowing itself deeper and deeper and deeper. So within a matter of, hours, 48 to 72 hours, they can be in your brain. It's like out of a horror movie. This is bad stuff.
And for people who don't understand this, Commissioner, this parasite eats living tissue here. What would an outbreak in this state mean to ranchers? What would it look like to ranchers?
Well, we have some tools that we didn't have in the 60s and 70s, thank goodness. We have some anti-parasitic drugs. One of them people recognize is ivermectin. It's effective against it. It'll prevent it, it'll cure it. One even better is called Dectomax. It's another anti-parasitic drug. So we can use those, it's actually labeled for pets. Humans can take it. I've got an emergency order ready to go. We can put it in animal feed, livestock feed, wildlife feed.
You have an emergency order ready to go?
Yes, from FDA. Yeah.
So how many doses do you have, and would that be spread out across the state?
We have to manufacture it. So until we get it, we can't pull the emergency order.
And this would be like for farmers to take a number of doses to put it in their livestock, right?
Yeah, and
ranchers, rather.
Well, they can already do that. But we just couldn't put it in the feed. But we'll be able to and the reason we want to put it in feed is not for livestock. It's for those high fence ranches that keep out feed for their deer and their exotic game animals. People that feed their deer corn, we can lace the corn with ivermectin and keep them from getting it. And the pigs and anything else that eats the corn.
Do you expect the demand for ivermectin, I guess, to increase?
Oh, yeah.
As
if we
the
have an outbreak,
screwworm approaches?
it will, yeah. A lot of farmers have already stocked up in anticipation.
And if screwworm significantly impacts cattle herds here in this state, what happens to beef prices?
Well, it's already had an effect on the beef prices because we get 15% of our stocker cattle out of Mexico.
Right.
And we've been shut down since January 2025. So we've got almost 2 million head of cattle backed up in Mexico that would normally be in our feedlots by now and being on people's plates. So it's exasperated the beef situation in that it's took another 15% of the cattle off the market that would normally have going to consumers.
So you expect it to potentially get worse, I guess, if this fly comes across the border?
Well, the cattle prices will drop, but the price at the grocery store won't.
It won't drop.
We've got Mexico, since they've got all these cattle backed up, their prices have dropped 30 and 40%, while ours are high. What are they going to do with them?
Down there, right?
Well, they're building more feedlots. They're adding on their feedlots. They got to do something. They're planting their own corn. They're expanding their own processing facility. We're losing all that business because it's going to stay in Mexico instead of come to Texas.
Before I let you go, political question. What's
Sure.
next for you?
You know, I've had a life before politics. I run cattle. I've got a horse operation. I've got a landscape construction. I've got a 120-acre tree farm. I'm going to continue my TV show. So look forward to that. We've got.
Are you done with politics?
Probably not. I've got some fight left in me. I doubt it. I doubt it seriously.
You think we'll see you on a ballot in the future?
I'm not going to say no. Never say no. But be nice to take a break, just to be honest with you.
Commissioner, always good to see you. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. God bless.